I have been living in the UK for almost 2 years now, and I need to say this before the British government revokes my visa. I love this country, I love the pubs, I love the history, I love that people say cheers for basically everything, and I even love the weather in a Stockholm Syndrome kind of way. But British houses? British houses feel like someone took the basic idea of a home, ran it through 300 years of plumbing compromises, wartime shortages, Victorian habits, and national stubbornness, and then just decided that was good enough forever. When I first moved here, I genuinely thought half the things in my flat were temporary. I thought surely someone forgot to finish the bathroom. Surely the kitchen was missing a utility room. Surely there was a normal explanation for why the sink had another sink inside it. But no, this was not a rough draft. This was the final product. This was Britain. So today I am walking you through 25 completely baffling British home items that made absolutely no sense to me as an American expat, and more importantly, why they exist. Because once I started asking questions, I ended up going down some truly ridiculous historical rabbit holes. And the maddening part is, the more you understand them, the more some of them start to make sense, which is exactly how assimilation begins. Number one, the washing machine in the kitchen. This was the first thing that broke my brain. In America, dirty laundry lives in a laundry room, a basement, maybe a garage if things are grim. But it does not live 6 inches away from the place where you chop onions and butter toast. When I viewed my first flat and asked where the washer was, the letting agent casually pointed under the kitchen counter like I was the weird one. That was the moment I realized I was not in Kansas anymore. The reason is actually pretty practical. Post-war Britain had to rebuild quickly, cheaply, and in very tight spaces. Plumbing was expensive, space was limited, and a lot of homes did not have basements. So the easiest solution was to keep all the water-heavy stuff in one room. The kitchen became the utility room by default. Rational? Kind of emotionally disturbing? Absolutely. There is still something deeply wrong about hearing your spin cycle go into full aircraft mode while you are making spaghetti. Number two, the plastic washing up bowl inside the sink. This one made me feel like I was being pranked. You walk into a British kitchen, look at the sink, and there is another sink sitting inside it. A plastic bowl in the sink. It is like buying a hat for your hat. I asked multiple people why this exists, and every single one of them became weirdly defensive, which was how I knew I had stumbled into sacred national territory. The explanation goes back to older ceramic and fire clay sinks. Those were tough, but they chipped easily if you dropped a heavy pan or clanged dishes around. The plastic bowl softened the impact. It also let people carry dishwater elsewhere, soak things separately, and use the little strip of sink around the edge to pour away tea or leftover soup. Which is clever, I admit, but from the outside it still looks like Britain solved the problem of having a sink by inventing a second, smaller sink and refusing to elaborate. So if you love this kind of content and you want to go deeper with us, check out our channel membership. Members get closer access to the channel, extra behind-the-scenes content, and a chance to be part of the stuff we are building as we keep making these videos. If you are the kind of person who loves the small details, the hidden history, and the strange logic behind everyday things, you will fit right in there. Now let's get back to the madness. Number three, the bathroom light on a pull cord. Nothing prepares you for needing the toilet at night in a strange British house and not being able to find the light switch. You pat the walls, you squint into the darkness, you begin to wonder if this is one of those eco homes where light is considered a privilege, and then a damp string brushes your forehead like the opening scene of a horror film. That string is the light switch. Not next to the door, not on the wall, hanging from the ceiling like you are about to summon an attic ghost. The reason is electrical safety. Britain runs on a higher voltage system than the US, and bathrooms are treated like danger zones because water and electricity do not negotiate. In many bathrooms, there simply is not enough safe wall space for a standard switch, so the mechanism goes up in the ceiling and the human being is given a bit of string. It is safe. It is logical. It also makes every bathroom visit feel like you are starting an old-fashioned furnace. Number four, separate hot and cold taps. This one is not just inconvenient, it feels personal. In America, you turn the handle and your sink gives you warm water like a civilized participant in modern life. In the UK, you get two taps. One dispenses liquid Antarctica, the other dispenses the wrath of God. Your job is to somehow position your hands in the one microscopic zone where they do not suffer permanent damage. Historically, this actually came from old plumbing systems where the cold tap came from the mains and the hot water often came from a storage tank, sometimes in the loft where contamination was a real concern. Keeping the supplies separate was considered safer. That part I can understand. What I cannot understand is why, after the arrival of modern mixer taps, half the country looked at this better invention and said, "No thanks, I would prefer to wash my face like I am defusing a bomb." Number 5. Carpeted bathrooms. I need everyone outside Britain to understand that this is real. This is not one weird aunt's house from 1978. Carpet in the bathroom is a real thing here, especially in older homes. Sometimes not just a bath mat, actual fitted carpet around the toilet, around the sink, around the zone where all the worst things in human life happen. The logic is warmth. Britain is cold, damp, and historically not great at heating homes evenly. In the 70s, a soft bathroom floor felt luxurious. It meant you were not stepping onto freezing linoleum in the middle of the night while rain attacked the windows. I understand the emotional appeal of that. I do, but there has to be a point where coziness meets biology, shakes hands, and agrees this was a terrible idea. Number 6. No window screens. This one sounds minor until you live it. In the US, window screens are just part of life. You open the window, air comes in, bugs stay out, society continues. In Britain, you open the window and accept whatever fate follows. Fly in the kitchen, wasp in the bedroom, one giant blue bottle bouncing off the glass for the next 4 hours like it pays rent. The usual British response is, "We don't really have dangerous bugs here." That is true, and I appreciate not sharing a continent with some of the monsters America has produced. But my issue is not danger, my issue is annoyance. The reason screens are uncommon is partly because many windows open outward or on side hinges, which makes screens awkward, and partly because older homes are treated with a kind of architectural reverence. But the end result is that fresh air always feels like a gamble. Number 7. Tiny keys for the windows. My flat came with what looked like a medieval jailer's starter pack. Little silver keys everywhere, on the windows, for the windows. Every accessible window had its own miniature lock, which means opening your home for air can feel like a low-level prison break. This is mostly about security and insurance. During decades when burglary was a bigger concern, insurers liked visible, key-operated locks on windows, especially at ground level. And once something enters the British home security ecosystem, it tends to stay there forever. The psychological effect is incredible. An American sees a window and thinks escape route or fresh air. A Brit sees a window and thinks, yes, but can it withstand an attempted break-in by a determined man named Darren? Number 8. Power outlets with their own switches. This was one of the rare times Britain confused me and then immediately impressed me. I plugged something in during my first week here. It did not turn on, and I assumed the appliance was broken. Then someone flicked the little switch beside the socket, and suddenly the machine came alive. British outlets do not just give you power, they make you ask for it politely. At first, it feels unnecessary, then you realize it is actually brilliant. The whole system is built around safety, fused plugs, and the ability to isolate power right at the wall. British people also love switching things off, not just unplugging them, switching the socket off too, as if stray electricity might sneak out at night and run up the bill. There is something deeply national about distrusting even an inactive toaster. Number 9. The electric kettle as a household command center. Americans think a kettle is a kitchen accessory. In Britain, it is emotional infrastructure. Every home has one. Every office has one. Every crisis begins with someone saying, "Put the kettle on," and somehow that is considered a valid response to grief, injury, unemployment, divorce, or national collapse. Part of this is practical. British kettles boil fast because the electrical system has the power for it. But the bigger truth is cultural. Tea is not a beverage here. It is an intervention. It is medicine, diplomacy, grief counseling, and social lubricant. Tell a British person you heat water in the microwave and watch them look at you the way a priest might look at a demon. Number 10. The letterbox in the front door. The first time the post arrived in my flat, I nearly jumped out of my skin. There was this violent metallic flap, a shove, a slap of paper on the floor, and suddenly my home had been breached by stationery. In America, mail lives outside. It respects boundaries. In Britain, your front door has a slot in it, like you are receiving secret war correspondence. This comes from dense housing and old delivery traditions. Terraced homes open straight onto the pavement, so there often is no front yard or mailbox post to work with. The front door became the destination. Efficient? Sure. But it also means the outside world can literally insert cold air and pizza menus directly into your hallway. Number 11, front doors that need a key from the inside. This one still bothers me. In a lot of American homes, you lock the deadbolt, and if you need to leave quickly, you twist a thumb turn and go. Simple. In many British homes, especially older ones, you need the actual key to unlock the door from inside. Meaning, if you lock up at night and the key is not nearby, congratulations, you have turned your own house into an escape room. Again, this is security culture, heavy mortise locks, insurance expectations, and a general belief that a properly secured home should feel like a small fortress. But as a concept, keeping the escape mechanism on a removable object the size of a biscuit still feels insane to me. Number 12. The tiny built-in fridge. The first British fridge I encountered looked less like an appliance and more like a suggestion. It was tucked behind a cabinet door and seemed capable of storing 1 bottle of milk, 6 eggs, and maybe a cucumber if the cucumber had modest ambitions. Where was the freezer drawer full of emergency food? Where was the giant American monument to overbuying? The answer is lifestyle and space. British kitchens are smaller, homes are older, and grocery habits have historically been more frequent and more local. You buy what you need for a few days, not enough supplies to survive a weather event. It is a completely different relationship with food storage. I respect it, I just miss the emotional security of owning a fridge large enough to hide in during a tornado. Number 13, the immersion heater switch. Few things in British life have frightened me like the red immersion heater switch. It sits there looking innocent, often outside a bathroom or near a cupboard, just waiting for a foreigner to ruin their month. I once flipped one on, assumed it was some ordinary home thing, forgot about it, and then met the electricity bill like it was a personal enemy. The immersion heater is basically a giant electric element heating stored water in a cylinder. Historically, people used timers or cheap off-peak tariffs to run it efficiently, often overnight. Used properly, it makes sense. Used accidentally, it becomes a direct debit to the power company and a life lesson about respecting unlabeled British infrastructure. If you are still with me, hit subscribe because I swear British homes have enough material for an entire series, and we are only halfway through the madness. Number 14. The airing cupboard. Once I learnt what the hot water cylinder was doing, I discovered one of Britain's strangest little domestic hacks. Because the cylinder sits in a cupboard and radiates warmth, people started putting shelves above it, and then they started putting laundry there, and towels, and bed sheets, and suddenly this hot little closet became a national institution. Americans throw clothes in the dryer and call it a day. Brits will wash clothes in the kitchen, carry them upstairs, and gently bake them in a cupboard like they are preparing herbs for winter. Is it slower? Yes. Is it weird? Definitely. But warm towels from an airing cupboard on a freezing morning are dangerously persuasive. This is exactly the kind of thing that converts people. Number 15. The whirligig. The rotary washing line is one of the most British objects ever invented because it takes a basic task, adds weather-based suspense, and turns it into a competitive outdoor activity. The second there is a hint of sun, people run outside, stab this spinning metal umbrella into the lawn, and peg half their wardrobe to it like they are racing the atmosphere. In parts of America, hanging your clothes outside is considered unfashionable. In Britain, it is common sense. Sun and wind are free. Electricity is not. The only problem is that British sunshine has the commitment level of a house cat, so the entire process becomes a gamble. The laundry goes out hopeful, and 2 hours later, everyone is sprinting into the garden because the sky has changed its mind. Number 16, the heated towel rail. Now this one is genius. I will give Britain this without hesitation. Heated towel rails are fantastic. In America, this feels like something you see in a fancy hotel and then forget about. In Britain, it is standard survival equipment because a wet towel in a damp house can remain wet long enough to develop a personality. The heated towel rail solves 2 problems at once. It dries the towel and gently warms the bathroom. It is practical, comforting, and one of the few British home ideas that does not require me to first experience psychological damage before appreciating it. Number 17. Radiator bleed keys. In America, heat usually comes out of vents. You do not negotiate with it. You do not service it with a tiny square key. You definitely do not walk around the house every winter listening for trapped air, like some kind of boiler whisperer. In Britain, that is normal. Because radiator systems can trap air, people bleed them by opening a valve until the air hisses out and the hot water can circulate properly. This means millions of British adults own a tiny tool whose only purpose is to make metal boxes spit and occasionally leak onto the carpet. It is the most British maintenance ritual imaginable, slightly inconvenient, a little messy, and treated as character building. Number 18. Extractor fans that sound like helicopters. The bathroom fan in my flat sounds like it is preparing for takeoff. The light comes on, and immediately the room is filled with such violent mechanical noise that private thought is no longer possible. Then, just when you think it is over, it keeps running after you leave, like the house is continuing the argument without you. The reason is damp. British homes are in a constant war against moisture, condensation, and mold. Once they were better insulated and more sealed up, ventilation became a bigger deal. So now bathrooms often force the issue with loud extractor fans that leave no room for human laziness. It is less a convenience and more a state-mandated anti-fungus campaign. Number 19. The Conservatory. This is one of my favourite British contradictions. You live in a country famous for grey skies, drizzle, and temperatures that make tomatoes feel personally offended. So what do you build onto the back of the house? A giant glass box, a room made almost entirely of windows, a greenhouse for middle-class furniture. The practical explanation is that conservatories have often been easier to add than full brick extensions. The emotional explanation is that British people are eternally optimistic about sunlight. The actual lived reality is that the room is freezing for much of the year, and then on the 3 truly hot days of summer becomes a place where no mammal should be expected to sit. Number 20. The boot room, porch, or tiny front airlock. A lot of British homes have this little entrance chamber before the real front door. You open one door, step into a narrow glass box, remove your wet shoes, shake off your raincoat, and only then enter the actual house. It is like docking a spaceship, except the hostile external environment is just Yorkshire in November. This makes complete sense once you live through enough wet weather. Mud, rain, wind, damp coats, muddy dogs, all of it needs to be intercepted before it invades the hallway. Americans often have mudrooms tied to garages. Britain, with its street parking and older housing stock, invented the tiny human decontamination pod instead. Number 21. Tea cozies. I thought tea cozies were one of those quaint things that only exist in children's books and gift shops. Then I saw one being used seriously, a knitted little hat for a teapot, put on lovingly, with zero irony, as though the teapot had just come in from the cold and needed looking after. And honestly, there is logic to it. If you brew tea in a pot and your house is drafty, the tea cools fast. A tea cozy keeps it warm. It is just insulation. But the fact that Britain solved thermal loss by dressing crockery in knitwear tells you everything about this country. They will invent an entire soft furnishing ecosystem before they admit the room might be a bit chilly. Number 22. Carpet in the dining room. I know I already mentioned bathroom carpet, but dining room carpet deserves its own hearing. Because unlike the bathroom, where the threat is obvious, the dining room is a place where spills are not theoretical. Red wine exists, gravy exists, beetroot exists, children exist, and yet in many British homes, all of that happens over cream carpet, like everyone involved has agreed to a blood oath of caution. A lot of this comes from old class habits and the idea that carpet signaled comfort and status. It also reflects the British obsession with keeping rooms warm and soft underfoot. But every dinner party on light-coloured carpet feels to me like a hostage situation, where the hostage is the flooring. Number 23. Toilets under the stairs. I am convinced British architects see empty space and take it as a challenge. If there is a triangular void under the staircase, someone will eventually decide that a toilet can go there. And to be fair, they are often right. You can fit a toilet there. You just may have to enter sideways, duck your head, and pray you are not too tall. These tiny cloakroom bathrooms are brilliant in a ruthless urban survival way. Older houses were not built with modern indoor plumbing in mind, so later generations shoved convenience into whatever dead space they could find. The result is a restroom experience that feels halfway between genius and punishment. Number 24. The wheelie bin recycling system. Taking out rubbish in Britain is not a chore. It is a compliance test. There are different bins, different colours, different lids, different collection days, different local rules, and an ever-present sense that one wrong yogurt pot could bring civic disgrace upon your household. In America, trash is simpler. In Britain, waste management feels like filing taxes outdoors. But this also says a lot about the country. British people may complain about the rules, but they also love the structure of them. They know which week is recycling, which caddy gets food waste, and exactly what the neighbours are doing wrong. It is environmental policy mixed with low-level social surveillance. Number 25. The condenser dryer. Even when you do have a dryer in Britain, it may not be the simple American version that just blasts hot damp air outside through a vent. No, quite often it is a condenser dryer which collects moisture into a tank or drawer that you have to empty yourself. So after drying clothes, you still get a bonus side quest involving a tray of warm linty water. This exists because a lot of British homes were not designed for easy venting, and drilling large holes through old walls is not always straightforward. So the dryer became self-contained, more flexible, and somehow also more annoying. It is a perfect summary of British housing in one appliance. Ingenious solution, mild inconvenience, complete acceptance. And that is really the theme running through all of this. British homes are not random, they are layered. Every bizarre feature has a backstory. Sometimes it is war, sometimes it is weather, sometimes it is Victorian plumbing, insurance paranoia, small room improvisation, or a national willingness to tolerate mild inconvenience for the sake of tradition. That is what makes the whole thing so funny. At first, all of these things seem completely unhinged. The kitchen washing machine, the string light switch, the taps that attack you, the microscopic fridge, the little window prison keys. But after a while, you start to see the logic. Then you start to adapt. And then one day you catch yourself switching sockets off at the wall, checking the sky to see if the washing can go out, and feeling weirdly pleased that your towel is warm. That is when you know it is over. You did not just move to Britain. Britain moved into you. So now you know why British homes feel like a museum of domestic compromise, why half the country appears to be living inside a plumbing time capsule, and why some of these completely baffling ideas are annoyingly kind of brilliant. And if you want the reverse version, all the things Brits find completely insane about American homes, then let me know in the comment, we'll make a video on that.